بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وبارك على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we continue from where we left off in Kitab al-Nikah, and we go on to the next chapter, which is the Kitab al-Bab al-Radā', al-Radā', referring to the breastfeeding. And this is an extension of what we discussed previously, which was the chapter referring to the tahrim, muharramat fi nikah, and who is not permissible to marry from. And the breastfeeding takes only some of the same hukm. As mentioned here by the author, he begins, raḥimahullāh, by saying, حكم الرضاع حكم النسب في التحريم والمحرمية. And so the ruling regarding the breastfeeding is the same as the ruling regarding lineage in relation to that which makes the person impermissible in terms of marriage. And this is due to the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam found in Bukhari and Muslim, where Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam states, يحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من النسب. That which is made haram by way of breastfeeding is what was made haram by way of lineage. Or likewise, تحرم الرضاعة ما تحرم الولادة. That the breastfeeding makes haram that which is haram from the walada, the birth. And so the author goes on to mention thereafter, فمتى أرضعت المرأة طفلا صارا ابنا لها. So when a woman breastfeeds a child, that child now is regarded as being her son or her child. Naam. And so it's her child by way of breastfeeding. وللرجل الذي ثاب اللبن بوضعه فيحرم عليه كل من يحرم على ابنهما وابنهما من النسب. And likewise for the man as well, who essentially the man is regarded as being the owner of that breast milk by way of his marriage. And so it is now haram, that which is haram for him by way of the breastfeeding is also that which is haram from the lineage. And so this is in regards to now, for example, a man is married to the woman breastfeeds that child. Let's say, for example, the breastfeeds a girl. It's now not permissible for that man to marry that girl. Naam. It's not permissible for that man to marry that girl because his wife is breastfed from that child. Breastfed that child. And so the child is an ibn or bintan, or the daughter of them. And so the radā' is muharrim. The breastfeeding is that which is regarded as being the haram, or that declares or that causes the individual to be haram for marriage. And thereafter, the author, raḥimahullah, he goes on to mention as well what constitutes the breastfeeding. Now, what is regarded as breastfeeding? And so the breastfeeding, he goes on to mention, as long as the milk reaches the throat and enters into the stomach. Whether that enters into the stomach by way of the breastfeeding itself, direct breastfeeding, so the suckling, or the breast milk is poured into the mouth and as a result enters the stomach, or the breast milk is poured into the nose and into the stomach. So there's no difference now. The author, raḥimahullāh, he mentions, there's no significant difference between the two. If the milk enters the mouth or the nose. Why? Nah, they all both enter the stomach. They're both entries into the stomach. Nah. So when we're talking about the breastfeeding, then the breastfeeding is either by the direct breastfeeding, the suckling, or if the milk is put into the mouth of the child and it enters the stomach, or the milk is put into the nose and enters the stomach. Each and every one of them are the same. Likewise as well, the author mentions maḥram kan or mashūban. And so referring to as well whether that is pure milk or that milk has been is makhlut. The milk is somewhat mixed. For example, the milk is mixed with water. Irrespective of whether the milk is mixed with water or is pure milk, then it will still enter into this ruling of the breastfeeding. Now I'm entering into the ruling of the breastfeeding. As long as whatever's mixed with that milk, for example, that which is the ghalib, that which is will take precedence, is the water. If, for example, now the water is mixed with the milk, however, the water becomes dominant, so there's more milk than water essentially, then it will not enter into the hukum of the breastfeeding. Now, so the point being is that the milk is the dominant substance of the two. The milk is the dominant substance of the two. It's not a case of that it is just a small amount of milk and majority water. Does that make sense, brother? طيب ولا يحرم إلا بشروط الثلاث. And in relation to this breastfeeding, then it's not established that the person or this person is haram in terms of marriage, except by way of the three conditions being established. So the first of these three conditions that Ibn Qudāmah mentions, raḥimahullah, أن يكون لبن الامرأة. So it has to be the milk of a woman. It has to be the milk of a woman. Why do you think they mention a woman? Or what do you think they mean by woman, essentially?
Like a human?
Human now, essentially now. Human. I don't mean anything else. So human. So when we're saying the milk of the woman, the human woman. But I say I don't mean anything else, but then there's more kalam after that. So he goes on to mention بكرا كانت أو ثيبا في حياتها, irrespective of whether she is a virgin or thayyib, she's been previously married. So it doesn't matter, either or. So for whatever reason, you may find that, for example, a woman is a bikr So the woman is a virgin. However, she has she's able to produce milk, and she breastfeeds a child, and then the same ruling would have still applied. Now, the same ruling would still apply. And if she was the thayyib, either a woman that had been previously married, then of course this ruling would also apply as well. Likewise as well, Qudāmah goes even to mention, so he mentions first in their life, the living, أو بعد موتها, or after her death. What do you think is meant here, after her death? What do you think he means here, after her death? No, so he left behind milk. Exactly, anything like that. So even if, for example, let's say, for example, she's passed away, she's died, but there's still milk that's been produced at that point in time, and that milk is used for a child. So that now will enter into the hukum. So it's not now the case that she has to be alive in order for that hukum to be established. All that needs to be established in that regard is that she is a human woman. So then Ibn Qudāmah says, وأما اللبن البهيمة أو الرجل نعم أو الخنثى مشكل فلا يحرم شيئا. He says, as for the milk of the behemoth, so of the cattle, or the man, it happens. It does happen. As for the milk of the behemoth, the cattle, or the man, or the khunthā, so the individual where you're not able to establish which of the two. Now, so for example, the person has the body parts of the male and the female. Then, in this regard, the individual would not the breastfeeding does not now allow for the tahrim. The breastfeeding does not allow for the tahrim. So these are exceptions to that. So generally speaking, when you have shurut that I mentioned, conditions of a particular matter, then when that condition is laid down, it excludes certain things. It excludes certain things. And this is the case throughout ahkam, whether it be ahkam in fiqh or other than that. That you have a definition given, and within that definition, that it now excludes certain things. So, for example, and something that we'll go and discuss at a later date or closer to the time, in terms of siyams, in terms of fasting, that the fast in the Sharia is al-imsak min al-muftirat من طلوع الفجر إلى غروب الشمس مع النية. So the fast, Islamic fast, is withholding from the things that break the fast from the beginning, the dawn break, until the sunset with the intention. That's the definition. With that definition now, it establishes conditions, of course, in order for it to be an Islamic fast. With those conditions established, what it now means is that it excludes certain things. So, for example, if we say it's from the Tulu al-Fajr or Imsak min al-Muftarat, that we withhold from the things that break the fast, it means that if a person indulges in anything that breaks the fast, then it cannot enter into that definition. Or now, for example, it says that it's from Tulu al-Fajr, so from dawn break. So if the person now begins after dawn break, it cannot enter into that definition. Or ila ghurub al-shams. So, for example, if the person now breaks the fast before the sunset, it cannot enter into that definition. Then it mentions as well ma'al niyyah, with the intention. So if the person does not have the Islamic intention, the intention of the ibadah, it does not enter into that definition. Is that clear, barakallahu feekum? So definitions lay out conditions as well, and those conditions established with that exceptions. So our first condition here, in terms of the breastfeeding, is that it has to be a woman. So then that excludes straight away the man, excludes the khunthā, excludes the baḥaim, excludes the cattle, now or the animals. Does that make sense, barakallahu feekum? And so as long as it's regarded as the woman, doesn't matter if the woman is virgin or not. Doesn't matter if the woman is alive or dead. As long as it's regarded as the woman, then it enters into that definition. So that's our first condition, barakallahu feekum. Our second condition is أن يكون في حولين, that it occurs within يعني the حولين, the breastfeeding period, and the suckling period. And that's referring to how long? 2 years now. So the suckling period regarding 2 years. So if now, for example, the suckling period or the woman is breastfeeding the child after that period, then it will not enter into that definition of the breastfeeding. It will enter into the definition of breastfeeding. And so this word hawl is another word for yani sana or am. As I mentioned, for example, in the definition of zakah, is a hal al-hawl. Yani if the year elapses, then obviously that's when the person pays the zakah. The balagh al-nisab or hal al-hawl. If the person reaches the nisab, that particular amount, and a year elapses. So this is the time period that is needed for that. Now the time period which is needed for that, which is the 2 years of the suckling. That's our second condition. Our third and final condition is أن يرتدع 5 رضاعات. That the person breastfeeds or breastfeeds a woman with 5. The child suckles 5 times. Now, so 5 sucklings. Irrespective of whether this is in a majlis wahid, so whether it's in one sitting, so it happens on one occasion, or it happens in several majalis, different sittings. So, for example, the woman breastfeeds the child, and the child takes the milk once, then twice, then she leaves the child, and then she comes back another time and suckles 1 time again, and then another 2 times. Now, so she suckled twice, then once, and then 2 times. Mathematicians, how much is that? That's the 5. So then that would include the 5. So it could be the 5 all at once, or based upon different sittings. It doesn't matter. Now, as long as the 5 are fulfilled, the 5 sucklings are fulfilled, then the condition is fulfilled. Does that make sense, Ikhwan? So what are 3 conditions? What are 3? To be a human woman. Naam, so let's be a human woman. Second, has to be within the first 2 years of the child's life. Now, the suckling period. The third, the suckling is done 5 times. Now, in addition to that mention of the 5 times as well, then it mentions the hadith or narration of Aisha radiallahu anha, where it mentions that أنزل في القرآن 10 رضاعات يحرمنا. So it is revealed in the Quran that there are 10 sucklings. And the suckling is done 10 times. فنسخ من ذلك 5. وصار إلى 5 رضاعات معلومات يحرمنا. فتوفي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والأمر على ذلك. And so it is revealed in the Quran, as we mentioned, 10 times. Then it was abrogated. It was abrogated to become 5 times. And so the affair became one where it was 5 times where the woman was suckled, or the child rather was suckled from the woman 5 times. And then the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and the affair remained as that. So essentially, what is being mentioned here is the fact that originally it was 10, and thereafter it was abrogated to 5. The abrogation came and there was 5. Is that clear, Barakallahu Feekum? How do you know it was abrogated? This was abrogated, this ruling. The narration came after the 5. How do you know? How do you know? Don't think too hard. Is the question clear?
No.
How do we know that this was abrogated? How do we know that this was abrogated? And again, don't think too hard. 5 is lower than 10? Think a bit harder. No. Because? No.
The time was revealed.
Hmm?
The time was revealed.
Time was revealed, but how do we know it was abrogated? How do we know the time?
Because what comes after it nullifies what came before it.
That's how abrogation works, but I'm saying, how do we know this is abrogated? When I said, don't think too hard. How do what? Because it mentions in the narration itself, there's abrogated. The reason why I ask this is because there are different ways that we'll know a narration is abrogated or a rule is abrogated. From those ways is the narration itself says that this was the ruling, and now this is the ruling. Naam, as we find in this narration. The narration mentions this was the previous ruling, and now that we have the ruling here. Another way, of course, as the brothers were alluding to, is that we are aware that there's 2 different rulings, but we are aware and we have knowledge of the tariq, of the dates essentially of each of the rulings. So one ruling comes and another ruling is mentioned, so, but we're aware of when each of these things occur. How would we be aware of the date, for example? The narrator? This is born near the death of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay? Possibly. Yeah, so then that's possible. Something alludes to where they were as well. So, for example, if the narration alludes to the fact that they were in Mecca, and then the next narration alludes to the fact they were in Medina. Or what else? No, that's stuff. But I'm saying, how do we know in terms of the dates now? If one narration came after the other, in terms of dates. Something can allude to time or to a place. What's that? Location, yeah, so that's the place. That's one way. I'm saying what's another way? For example, if within the narration it's mentioning a specific event, so narration mentions a specific event that occurred. So the narration could be mentioning something that occurred during a particular battle, for example. because it's mentioned it occurs between that time, we know when that time occurred or what year that action occurred. So then that would indicate as well the date. So anyway, this particular narration here is referring to يعني the how it was, the ruling was 10 and then it was 5. And then the time, the death of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it remained at that 5. Now, the 5. So, thereafter, Ibn Qudāmah mentions يعني a mas'ala, which is a daqiq. يعني it's quite a precise and specific mas'ala. He mentions, فإذا كان للرجل امرأتان فأرضعت إحداهما بلبنه، يعني بلبن طفلة، والأخرى طفلة صار أخوين لأن اللقاح واحد. And so it mentions, يعني if a man has 2 wives, and so now one of them breastfeeds a child, then the other child becomes يعني they become يعني siblings by way of that. They become siblings by way of that. Does that make sense? So man has 2 wives. He has a child. One of the children is breastfed by one of the wives, and so the other child now becomes a sibling, just by way of the breastfeeding. Now, just by way of the breastfeeding. So what we understand from that is, على سبيل المثال, a man has 2 wives. So Abbas has 2 wives. Now, Abbas has 2 wives. One of the wives, breastfeeds another child. So she breastfeeds another child. And then she breastfeeds the child 5 times. That child, and Abbas's second wife, Abbas's second wife has a child through birth. Those children are يعني children by way of they have ishtirak with the father. So the common denominator is that father. Is that clear, barakallahu feekum? So one wife breastfed يعني another child. The second wife had a child. So based upon the fact that he is the common denominator, essentially, those 2 children are siblings. Does that make sense? Those 2 children are siblings. Then he goes on to mention another mas'ala, raḥimahullāh. Then the same mas'ala, however, now the same issue in terms of he has 2 wives. But now it mentions وإن أرضعت إحداهما بلبنه طفلا 3 رضعات ثم أرضعتها الأخرى ثم أرضعتها أخرى رضاعتين. طيب رضاعتين صارت بنتا له دونهما. صارت بنتا له دونهما. So here again it's a specific mas'ala, daqiq. That individual has 2 wives. Now, again, we use Abbas again. 2 wives. The first wife breastfeeds the child 3 times, whilst the second wife breastfeeds the child 2 times. Naam. What does Ibn Qudāmah mention about that hukum? Whose child is it? What the breastfed 3 times? Both of them. Any more answers? The fathers? Which are the mothers? Both of the mothers? All of them. Everyone. Oh my bad. Big family. It's essentially just the fathers. It's just the fathers. It can't be the first wife because she breastfed how many times? 3. So she didn't complete the 5. And we said from the conditions, has to fulfill the 5. Naam. If you're talking about the tahrim, has to fulfill the 5. Because she fulfilled the other 2 conditions, but the third one she didn't fulfill. So if the woman that breastfed 3 times didn't fulfill the 5 and fulfill those conditions, then Bab Ola, the woman that did it twice, of course, didn't fulfill the conditions as well. Naam. However, why is it that considered to be the child of the father, though?
Because he allowed his wife to breastfeed the child 5 times.
Because when you make jam of the 2, the 3 and the 2, it's 5. And so each of those conditions are fulfilled for the father. Because it was a woman that breastfed. It was during that time, and the suckling occurred how many times? 5 times, and they were both his wives. So now, in this regard, if they're both his wives, then the breast milk belongs to the father. Naam. Is that clear, barakallahu fikum? And so this is what was in regards to that, or that is in regards to that particular mas'ala, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. And thereafter, Ibn Qudāmah goes on to state, وَلَوْ كَانَتْ طِفْلًا زَوْجَةً لَهُ انفسخ نكاحها. And so, if now that child is his wife, then this nullifies the nikah, the contract. So if we're talking about if it's discovered now that there's a relationship by breastfeeding, and they've done a nikah contract, that contract now has become nullified. No. And so Ibn Qudāmah is referring to that specific mas'ala, where now one of his wives breastfeeds the child 3 times, the other wife breastfeeds the child twice, and then he marries that child later on. Now, then if that's discovered, that particular rule is discovered, then that contract is null and void. Now, وَلَزِمَهُ نِصْفُ صَدَاقِهَا يَرْجِعْ بِهِ عَلَيْهِمَا أَخْمَاسًا. And so, what is upon him is to return half of her maḥram. To return half of the maḥram. And so, then it goes to mention, ولو أرضعت إحدى امرأتيه طفلة 5 رضاعات. نعم 5 رضاعات. Then if one of his wives, of course, was to do to breastfeed 5 times, then حرمت عليه. That woman is now regarded as being the mother of that child through breastfeeding, and it's not haram. because she's now become the mother of that child by way of رضاعة. So we mentioned 3 and 2. If it's 3 and 2, then it's not tahrim upon the mothers, the women. But as soon as 5, then it becomes tahrim upon the women. So thereafter, Qudāmah was to mention the مسألة ولو تزوج رجل كبيرة ولم يدخل بها وصغيرة فأرضعت كبيرة الصغيرة حرمت الكبيرة وثبت النكاح الصغيرة. Again, مسألة دقيقة. He goes on to mention that if a man was to marry an older woman, however, he hasn't consummated that marriage with her, and a younger woman, and that older woman had breastfed the younger woman, then it is not permissible, i.e., that older woman is not permissible for him. And the marriage to the younger woman is maintained. So the marriage to the younger woman is maintained, whilst the marriage to the older woman, is nullified. And so the reason for that is that the older woman has become who? If he's married the older woman and the young woman, who's the older woman? Zawja, the mother of the wife, the Zawja. And because he hasn't consummated, that's the significant factor here. He hasn't consummated the marriage. Then the woman is not haram for him. The younger one is not haram for him. Now the younger one is not haram for him. However, if he consummated, then what? Who's haram for him? The older or the younger one? The younger one. And the older one? It's allowed. Now. So, the clear distinction between the two. Is the clear distinction between the two. Shaykh Fawzān actually mentions that they are both haram for him. They are both haram for him. Why? Why both? So if he had consummated the marriage with the older one. Because what's the ruling? Do you remember what the ruling was? That's her mother. All the daughters become haram now. So the daughters become haram. But we said the daughters. And so why are they both haram? Because we mentioned the mother haram. So you tied yourself up in knots. But you're in the right track though. You can't marry anyone sending, yeah? But why is the woman now haram? The younger woman.
You can't marry the mother's daughter.
You can't marry the daughter?
Becomes like his mother.
Becomes like
his mother. His mother-in-law becomes like his mother. So that means anyone becomes like his daughter.
Becomes like his mother or daughter.
The younger woman becomes like his.
Let's lay it all out. So then put aside the breastfeeding. Right? Put aside the breastfeeding. If a man marries the a woman that has a daughter, what is that ruling? In terms of, is he permitted to marry that daughter? If he hasn't consummated the marriage, and then, for example, he divorces that woman, is he permitted to marry the daughter? Yes. If now the man has consummated the marriage, is he permitted to marry the daughter? No. Okay. If now the man marries a woman and he hasn't consummated the marriage with the woman, is he permitted to marry the mother? He hasn't consummated it. The mother. So the man marries a woman, he hasn't consummated that marriage. Is he now permitted to marry the mother? No. If he has consummated, in Bab Ola, can't marry the mother. Does that make sense? Clear? Sure. If everyone starts nodding and I ask you, you have to be able to answer, inshallah. Naam. So, when it comes to marrying the mother, the daughter of that woman becomes haram only after. When we say haram, permanently. Becomes haram only after consummation. In this scenario, though, if you've married the woman, then the mother becomes haram. In what scenario? By way of the contract. By way of the contract and not the consummation. No, by way of the contract, not the consummation. So now, going back to, does everyone understand the asl now? So then when we go to now the issue of the breastfeeding, what was the scenario we discussed? The man so the woman breastfed. No, so we said that if the man marries an older woman or a younger woman, the older woman he's married but he hadn't consummated with her, and this older woman has breastfed the younger woman. If he hasn't consummated with the older woman, then who's haram for him? The mother, the older woman. If now he has consummated it, then who's haram for him? Both of them. Both of them. Because now, if he hasn't consummated it, so if he hasn't consummated it, then it's as if he is marrying the daughter of the mother, which is permissible for him to do. If now he consummates it, then it's not permissible for him to marry that daughter. But remember, we're still saying that he has done the aqd nikah with the daughter. Naam. As soon as he does the aqd nikah with the daughter, he is not permitted to marry the mother. Naam. Irrespective of whether he consummates it or not, he's not permitted to marry the mother. In this scenario we're discussing here, he's done the aqd nikah with the mother and the daughter. Naam. And so the point being now is that if he's consummated it with that mother, it cancels out both. They both cancel out. Is that clear? You sure? La ba'as, alhamdulillah. No. He did? Who can explain it? Ustādh Ahmed. Let's say at the same time, but he's married both now. The older one. Yes. Understand? So they cancel each other. Yes. The older one's cancelled because he's consummated the marriage. So he cannot now marry the younger one. And he's married the younger one, but that cancels out marrying him married the older one. Just by him doing the contract with the younger one. No. They're both haram for each other. Make sense? Jazakumullah khair. I told you it was daqiq. نعم. ولو نحكي امرأة ثم قال هي أختي من الرضاع فسخ نكاحها ولها مهر إن كان دخل بها أو نصفه إن كان لم يدخل بها ولم تصدقه وإن صدقته قبل الدخول فلا شيء لها. And so here it mentions that if a man was to marry the woman, then he says, this is my sister by way of رضاع. Yani, so we breastfeed from the same woman essentially. Then this nikah is null and void. And she is permitted to take yani, her mahar. So she's permitted to take her mahar if he had consummated that marriage. Now, if he hasn't, then she's permitted to half of the mahar. Now, does that make sense? Barakallahu feekum. So, then finally, the author mentions وإن كانت هي التي قالت هو أخي من الرضاع فأكذبها ولا بين لها فهي امرأته في الحكم. And so if now the woman says, for example, this is my brother by way of رضاع, however, he denies that. So he declares that she's a liar in that regard. She's lying. And she has no proof. Then she would remain as his wife in the hukum. The ruling would be that she remains as his wife. So, because essentially, if he is now saying she's lying, he's declared her that she's lying, her claim is one of a lie, then what we understand from that is she is fi mahal tuhma. She's in that place where she's being accused of something. And so upon her now is the proof, the bayna. If she now fails to bring that proof, then the hukum remains the same. So the hukum remains the same. Question being now, why would someone find themselves in that scenario? How is it that a person could find themselves in that scenario where the wife is saying that no, we're actually related through suckling? How would this occur? How could this possibly occur? Okay, but we would say they could, find out in the future. But what I'm saying is more so, how could this occur where he says no, she's lying? No, essentially that. So the woman is trying to, if she's trying to find a way out of the marriage where the marriage is nullified. From the way to nullify the marriage is to question the validity of the marriage in the first place. And so if she was to bring something that would question the validity of the marriage, where she says the marriage is not even valid in the first place because we are siblings through suckling, then with that in that regard, then the marriage will be nullified. And so she's brought the claim, he now denies that claim, upon her is the proof in that regard. Upon her is the proof, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. But that's a scenario in how that would occur. وغير مستبعد. And it's not something which is far-fetched. No, it's not something which is far-fetched. Wallahu musta'an. Alhamdulillah, we'll conclude with that point there, inshallah ta'ala. جزاكم الله خير بارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Now,
going back to the question regarding the woman and the man that allowed two wives, two. Say if he was to divorce her,
okay,
one of them, and then she ends up getting married to another man and gives birth to a child. Are there any lineage or
so
link?
the man's married to two wives. What's the scenario? where one does the suckling 3 times, one does 2 times. Yes.
And now he divorced one of them.
He divorced one of them. Okay. So, for example, the one that suckled twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
She ends up getting married to another man and she gives birth to a child.
Yes.
Is there any relation between?
No, there's no relation, because there's no relation to her and that child, because that child only suckled twice, so they didn't fulfill those conditions. So the relation is only with the husband. Does that make sense? No.
So any time the husband and the child, that child is related.
Yeah. There's relation through that.
So now that woman, if she was to marry, let's say that child that she suckled was a male, she later now got divorced. Is it permissible for him to get married to her?
That child.
That child.
Yes. Yes. Because these conditions haven't been fulfilled.
Isn't his father previously married to her?
Oh. His father is married to her.
Because obviously the asl is.
Oh, Sahih. From that bab, yeah. So because it will be essentially his father's ex-wife. Yeah.
So it won't be permissible.
Wouldn't be permissible, no.
Okay.
No. From that bab, no, it wouldn't be permissible.
Okay.
No. Jazakallah khair. Barakallahu feekum, ikhwan. No.
You know the example you gave with the mother and the daughter. If you consummate it with the mother, then if she was breastfed and she aborted.
Go there again, yeah.
I was trying to understand, but when he made the nikah with the daughter, wouldn't that have been nullified anyway? Or was it incorrect?
It's possible to say that that is one position, but another one is that they just cancelled each other out. They both just cancelled each other out.
So it's not a case of like he doesn't know, or he didn't know at the time when the nikah was made.
Yeah, if he did it upon knowledge, then you definitely say that this one is not valid. The younger one. No. Or he might have married the younger one first. It doesn't mean when, you can marry the younger one first. Just because the younger one doesn't mean he married her second.
If you go with the younger one first and the older one, the mother's not allowed.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. In any scenario, they're both cancelled out. Yeah, they're both cancelled out, generally speaking. Unless it could be said if he did it with knowledge. If he did it with knowledge, then this is obviously from haramat.
Before when you mentioned the Bahima and the Rafi, is the example that you gave about the father having, with the 3 and the 2.
Yeah.
Is that what they mean by the man in this?
No. It means that a man produces milk. Yeah. That's literally the man producing milk. No, so if that was to happen, then it's not gonna. It doesn't enter into that ruling. That's the point. No. Yeah, it could. It's possible. If it meets these conditions, yeah. Allah's best. No, barakah.
So that means anyone other than his biological mother
that fulfill those conditions.
would be able to marry his sister.
Yeah, exactly. No. عفوا إخوة. جزاك الله خير. cut it short there. بارك الله فيكم جزاكم الله خيرا وصلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.